Welcome back, friends. It's another episode of Global Card Collectors. And we're with show regular and also host our friend Justin, and he's just come back from the National. Justin, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Hey, good to be here. Technically not even back from the National yet, still in Chicago. Road game today from my brother-in-law's basement, but I'm good, man. Show was great. Another great National in the books. Got some cool cards and cool stories that I'm excited to show. But yeah, fun being on this side of the camera again. I think the last couple times I've been on, I've been in the hosting role, which is infinitely harder.
I don't know about that. I think you kind of just half grow into it, and I think it's just important to kind of get some I guess what the person wants to say in the episode, and you're going to find that role is going to get easier and easier. Anyway, mate, I wanna get kicking by asking, and I guess the first question I have is, you went to last year's National. What do you think was different about this year's National and last year's National?
So one big difference that I observed is, so now we have the National, but we also have Fanatics Fest, with Fanatics
Yes.
taking over, the licensing of Topps already, and they're coming for, NFL and NBA here shortly. Fanatics is a big player in the hobby, and they've been trying to 10x the hobby, and Fanatics Fest is a part of that. From everything I've heard, year one of Fanatics Fest, I wouldn't say it was a flop, but didn't live up to expectations. People were impressed by Fanatics Fest this year. And you've probably
100%.
seen the content, Will, that, after Fanatics Fest, there was a lot of talk. Will this replace the National? Will this get bigger than the National? And I feel like the folks that run the National are certainly attuned to the fact that Fanatics Fest is chasing them. And so as a result of that, I noticed a lot more, you know what, I'll just call it what I perceived it as, and people can throw tomatoes at their screen if they want, gimmicks. I saw a lot of gimmicky stuff, a lot of, loud, like repack breaks, stand in line for a free, shot at getting a repack card. There was more games, I saw a basketball shootout and some other stuff going on. The live breaks and stuff was always there, but it seemed a bit more highlighted this year. More celebrities kind of milling around, and that part of it being highlighted, right? Because if we saw the videos from Fanatics Fest, we saw that was a big part of it, like Wemby out there making deals, Tom Brady. Brady was at the National this year, right?
Wow.
There was a lot more of that sort of thing that seemed like it was going on. Fun fact, I walked right past Dominique Wilkins.
Oh no!
I kid you not, he was 3 feet past me before I realized who it was, and I just yelled, Dominique Wilkins! He was gone, though. Man, I wish I'd realized it a minute sooner to take a picture with him, because I loved watching him play as a kid. But yeah, it seemed like there was a lot more of a kind of that, maybe a nicer word would be showmanship put out there, clearly aimed at the audience that, is interested in kind of the multifaceted experience, right? Because that's the thing about Fanatics Fest. It's a card show, but it's also an interactive sports experience. The National still is primarily a card show. Obviously, that's what it came up as, and there's still, that is still what it is at heart. There's still, a ton of vintage tables, a ton of old school collectors and all that. But there was certainly more of what I saw as an effort to keep up with Fanatics Fest and, keep people that might be interested in that sort of thing from, and maybe not from going to Fanatics Fest, but also to say, hey, we can still come to the National too. Right. In other words, not just losing those people to Fanatics Fest. So that was probably, I would say the biggest difference that I noticed. That and just, I guess, growth in certain things. And I put this on my IG the other day. At big shows ever since I've been going to them, because Chicago Sports Spectacular I started going to in 2022, and that's a pretty big show too. And, over the last few years I've been doing that. There's obviously a lot of young people that are in this hobby with the Zion cases with $30K worth of cards in there, trying to use this as kind of a money-making gig. I feel like there was an uptick in that this year at the National from last year even. That's just a thing. That's a big part of the hobby right now, it seems like. And I'm a little bit torn on it personally, because on the one hand, it's cool to see kids, getting business skills, learning about, supply and demand and negotiations and all that. But on the other hand, there's a line there somewhere where, they're potentially playing with a lot of big dollars on stuff that may or may not hold its value. So I think where the morally gray comes in is, are these companies kind of manipulating kids into essentially playing the lottery? And I think there are some entities in the hobby getting very close to that. But either way, that is something I noticed too, that part of the hobby seems to be still kind of growing a bit.
That's interesting, man. You brought up, there's a lot to unpack there. I
Yeah.
think the first thing is the fact that Fanatics Fest has come in and it's been such a big deal this year in
Mhm.
particular. Like you said, last year it sounded like a bit of a flop, but this year it really did kind of build up a lot of excitement and hype about the hobby. And whether it's the economy changing or that sort of thing, something like Fanatics Fest definitely, I think, got the people from the National talking, and they're like, we got to up our
Mhm.
game. So I feel like it's that old saying of a rising tide lifts all ships. So here
Mhm.
comes Fanatics Fest, and this is how our ideas are. This is what we can bring. This is the showmanship that we can have. This is how we can differentiate ourselves from the National. And the National looks and sees that and goes, wow,
Mhm.
we've got to step it up because we've got
Yeah.
competition now. So I feel like any competition in this space is honestly just going to be really good for the collectors if you look at the big picture of it. Like you said, there might be a little bit too much of like, let's get the camera out and let's film ourselves and pretend that we're having a good time sometimes. But I think overall, that kind of interest, that kind of investment in the hobby is only going to be good for collectors in the long run. So that was the first piece I noticed.
I do think it's a fine line though, because right, like you
Yeah.
want those kind of, and this is obviously targeted at more like modern collectors, younger collectors, that sort of thing. I mean, at the same time, right, you want to make sure there's a balance there, because I'm obviously a primarily vintage collector,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a little bit more, I think, than though I think there's a movement within vintage collecting to being a little bit more amenable to reconciliation with modern collectors. But I've always kind of been on that side of things, and even I was at times like, this is sort of crossing into where it's a little much for my taste. Not objectively bad, just a little much for my taste. And I know that there were other vintage collectors that are maybe further down that road than I am, thinking, yeah, this is a way too much. So what I think the National has to be careful of, right, is there's a very large vintage only show in Strongsville that is
Mm-hmm.
apparently, I've never been, but apparently it's growing by leaps and bounds. And you got to make sure, right, that at the same time you don't want to lose the more modern collectors or younger collectors to Fanatics Fest. You also don't want to create a scenario where vintage collectors are like, well, the National's just for these people now, so we're all just going to go to Strongsville or something like that.
Wow.
So I don't envy the people at the National, because it's a tough balance to strike just because of how diverse the hobby is.
It's interesting because I feel like that's a great point, and I feel like I've seen that in the micro in New Zealand. So we have two big shows in New Zealand, and the first show is the New Zealand Card Collectors Show, and that's been going for about 4 or 5 years, and it brings people from all over the country to go to it.
Mm,
Collectors big and small, vendors big and small. It's really cheap for vendors, and so you're getting all of these really niche, really interesting cards
mm,
that you'll probably never see anywhere. Like a lot of vintage stuff, boatloads of cigarette cards. Just people
oh
who
yeah.
have very eclectic collections, and so it was a beautiful fun day, and I loved it to bits. I love it to bits. At the same time, last year there was a show in the biggest city of New Zealand, Auckland, called the
Mm,
Auckland Card Show, and they had a little bit more flash, a lot more showmanship. They had a
mhm,
stage on the a big stage there where everybody's talking about cards and ripping packs, and there
mhm,
was a lot of hype and excitement there too. It was mainly TCG, but I think those two shows, as different as they are, because they are kind of separated by times when they happen, because they're separated by locations as well.
mhm.
It's something where they can both coexist, but at the same time, you're right. They need to, something like the National needs to be careful that they don't lose their identity and try and mimic the new boy. They've got to have their own kind of, this is who we are. We're going to
Yeah.
keep to that as well. So, but at the same time, I still believe that overall, at least for now, it is good for collectors, so that there is something for everyone at that show. And it sounded like it was just a massive success in my opinion. Would you agree with that? That it was a
Oh yeah,
success?
it was great, and there is something for everyone, right? That's the thing
Mhm.
about the National, and right, like for me, my thing this year, just as it was last year, if it's not your thing, go to where your thing is, right?
Yeah.
That's my whole deal. The place is huge. You're gonna come across a lot of tables. If you're somebody who collects modern cards or vintage baseball, you're going to have, I mean, that's where, by the way, that's, if you collect either modern anything or vintage baseball, that's what the majority of the show is. I mean, that's
Mhm.
where you're going to find what you want. You're going to find it quickly, and you're going to have a lot of tables that you want to scope out. Um, if you're somebody like me who does vintage football and vintage boxing, though I will say there was an uptick in vintage football, I think, from last year. It's still kind of, you got to hunt around to find what you want. But the bottom line is, if you see a table that doesn't have what you want, you can tell pretty quickly. Keep going until you find your thing. And when you find your thing, the dealers that are doing that, sit there, have a conversation, look at those cards, enjoy the part of the hobby that you enjoy there, because it's there. And there's no need to spend a bunch of time around the other stuff that you're not interested in. So yeah, I think this was a great national for me. I had an awesome time. And yeah, I echo that, Will, that I think the national does need to be a place where there's something for everybody. It's just a matter of, finding that balance as to where you don't push anybody away in one direction or the other.
Yeah, great, man. I even saw on Instagram a few places that were selling cricket cards. So it's like, wow, that's pretty interesting, man. So I was pretty impressed. Probably
You know,
my next show that I'm going to go to, the big one, is going to be London, and mainly because when I went to Germany, I couldn't find any rugby or cricket cards,
yeah,
and so I just assumed London being a place where rugby began and cricket began. There's got to be a few collectors here. Vintage boxing too. Like I'm going to be looking for that kind of stuff. So I think for me, a show would be something where I could hopefully pick out a few really nice cards, but I would be looking for those hard to find ones. That's
yeah.
what would make a good show for me.
And you actually hit on two things to just mention real quick too. I did not see any rugby cards. I did not see any cricket cards. But you know what I saw a heck of a lot more of than I did a year ago?
Ah,
Non-sport cards. I'll tell you
wow.
what. I saw a whole lot of inventor cards, famous American like presidents cards, that sort of thing.
Wow.
I saw like some rare Walt Disney cards, things of that nature. My buddy Mark, who I follow on IG, the Uncommon Curator, super cool selection of, like, he has some boxing and track and field too. Almost bought an Ali card from him, but couldn't quite get there price wise for myself. But huge selection of this non-sport stuff. I heard another dealer who I actually bought a card that I'll show in a bit from, talking about how his biggest sellers are the president's cards. So that's been something a little bit interesting to see, is that growth in some of the more unique stuff. But to your other point, Will, about buying the hard to find stuff, that is my biggest recommendation for somebody going to the national is, you know what, if you're looking for stuff that you can find on eBay or you can find on ComC or you can find in a Facebook group, you can probably get it cheaper before or after the national, because national prices do
Hmm.
tend to be a bit up there sometimes. The best part of the national for me, and I'll talk about this more with specific cards, is you can find stuff there that does not come up on eBay. It does not come up on ComC. That's the ticket. Like, just like what you're saying with the rugby and cricket cards, to me, that's, that and seeing old friends and such are the reasons you go to the national, to pick up rare cards and to, meet people and see friends. If you're going to pick up, I don't know, a Victor Wembanyama silver prism and a PSA 10, buy that on eBay would be my advice, because you're going to get it a whole lot cheaper.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. Do you want to tell us some stories about maybe just what happened on day one, day two, or however you want to frame it, man? Just have a crack. Let us
For
know
sure.
how it went for you.
So, kind of overarchingly, I should just mention I only got to go 2 days this year, Thursday and Friday. The national being in Chicago is awesome for me, because this was home for me until last year, right when I moved to
Hmm.
Tampa. So it's awesome because I come here, I get a flight, and I don't really have to worry about lodging or food or whatever. I have so many really good friends here and family, and so I have that. But the con of that is, or not con, but like something that takes away time from the show is, I had, while I was here, family stuff, graduation parties. I had a wedding yesterday. So it's like, so I only got to go 2 days, but in those 2 days, I feel like I did two good full days. And to me, day one of the national, and this is what I did this year, should really be about, walking the floor. Because I'll tell you what, if you're going to jump on something right away, it's got to be something where it's like, this is it. This is what I came here to get. This is my number one or number two grail card that I came for. If it's anything else, be patient, right? Because you're going to walk that floor. And I've talked to many people who have sat there and kicked themselves because they blew their budget before seeing the whole show. So most of my day one, so I had blown a chunk of my national budget prior to the show. actually on a couple big cards. I've actually got them here. This one
Great.
is a 35 National Chickle Newt Rockney. This was, as of
Okay.
a couple months ago, my big gold card for the National. But man, I found this copy that I fell in love with at a good price a couple months back. So that took a chunk of my National budget. As too did this one that I just won an auction days before the National, and that's a 1912 T227 Jack Johnson card. And this might be my favorite Jack Johnson card that I own. The colors, the pose.
I was about to say that color's awesome, dude. That
I
really pops even from here, man.
And this is a pop sub 50 in all grades between SGC and PSA. So when I saw this at auction, I had to go for it. So that ate some of my budget. So that ties in because on day one, a lot of what I was doing was trying to sell some stuff to build the budget back up.
How
So
interesting.
yeah, which I know I don't usually do, right? I'm not much of a seller. I hang on to most of what I have, but I don't have an infinite budget. I don't have an infinite supply of money, unfortunately. So I made a choice this year. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sell some stuff. Like I sold some of my Barry Sanders cards because I have a ton of Barry Sanders. I love Barry, but I've got a ton of that stuff, so I can sell some of it. I saw some of my vintage boxing that just, I kind of bought early in that journey and have kind of just moved away from a little bit.
Mhm.
I sold some of that. I sold most of my stuff to one guy. His name's James. He runs a channel called Elite Hunters, which is an awesome channel. He does some boxing videos from time to time and very fair offers. I know where he's coming from. He needs some room on stuff and, within that context. So he made me very fair offers. And he essentially funded most most of my purchases over the weekend.
Great.
So, but yeah, that was part of day one too. I got to catch up with, I talked to James a bit, a friend of mine named George from last year, caught up with him. But most of the day was just me trying to sell, and more importantly, walking the floor. I wanted to know what was there. So I got there about 10 a.m. and I think I left close to 4. And at about 3:45, after walking the day, and my plan was not to buy anything on the first day unless I saw major goal card that I was coming for. But one of the cool things about the National is sometimes there's stuff I don't put on my list just because I think there's no way I'm going to find it. And among those cards was this particular 1912 Cohen and Weenan Jack Johnson card. Got a good view of it there. So
Yeah,
Jack
yeah.
Johnson actually had 2 cards in this set. The other one's a portrait shot, and it's pretty common. This is a PSA 4. I'm not sure I'm getting a good view on the grade, but you got the card, which is the more important part anyway. He's got 2
Mhm.
cards in the set. The portrait shot, which is a good card, but I like it but don't love it. It wouldn't be one that I jump at. This one seems to be a lot less common, and I haven't really seen one in my price range for sale. Dealer had this marked at 600, ended up selling it, offering me 5 on it. At first I told him, you know what, I'm going to walk a little more, maybe come back tomorrow. Caught myself immediately. I'm like, you know what, I don't need to walk the floor anymore. I want this card. So I did make a purchase on the first day because I couldn't help myself, but this is a great card. I love his pose. It's a good copy of it, well centered, and just Jack Johnson's my guy, so I couldn't resist. And this black back, that's a pop 5 on PSA, so not a card you see every day. So I couldn't turn it down. So that was my first day. As I was almost leaving the show, I picked up this Jack Johnson, which I was very happy about.
That's really cool, man. A lot again, more to unpack from what you've said. A couple of things that I noticed in that I wanted to maybe expand upon is the pre-national kind of deals that you can
Mhm.
get. And I think
Yeah.
I and John have talked about this together about looking for deals pre-national. And it seems like you've managed to do quite well with those, finding some cards that have been on your list for a long time. And I assume you got them at pretty good deals. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Rockney I paid about market value for, but
Hmm.
it was a nice copy, and you
Yeah.
know what, I was okay doing that because I liked it. But that was also a couple months ago. Now the Jack Johnson, I talked to a buddy of mine who we have a common friend named Todd March, who's probably the biggest Jack Johnson collector in the world. I think I mentioned him on this channel before, and he said that Jack Johnson I got here should have gone in the 900 to 1,000 range. I got it for 713.
Great,
So for
man.
this card, I mean, I saw a 2 marked at 1,500 at the national. Sorry, at 1,900, and the dealer told me he was, hoping to get 15 out of it. And I think that card had sold by the end of the weekend. So, I mean, this is because it's a scarce card and it's one that people really like. So yeah, I got a good deal on that. And actually, there's another card that was delivered to my house while I was here. It was a 1950 Feltback Joe Paterno that I
Okay.
picked up days before the National as well, and that's a rare football card. I'm not as rare as some of these others, but pop, I think, in that like 150 range or something like that total. But I got that at a very good deal, and that's one that I've been trying to track down forever. So definitely pre-national, and actually my buddy Scott, who has a channel, Scotty Tradition, he's one of the guys who runs the Football Card Hall of Fame on YouTube. He was saying
Hmm.
that post-national you get a lot of good deals too, because a lot of people come back and sort of realize they've overspent their budget, so they try to sell stuff quickly before their wives find out, I guess. So that's interesting too. But yeah, would definitely pre-national, and I'm not shy about spending my money pre-national either. It's like if I see what I want and it's at a good price ahead of time, I'm more than okay to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that's really cool advice, man. And I agree with you. What I have noticed though this year, and John has probably noticed it more than I because he does a lot of buying on eBay, is he says it's really hard for him now to win some of these auctions. Like the market right now, I think a big piece because of Fanatics' influence on the market itself, because there are these, as you said, these youngsters who are coming into the market and are kind of looking for a way
Yeah,
to kind of earn money. It's really hot. It's really hot again. And I don't know if it's as hot as the boom, but it might be in some ways. There's some things that aren't like as people aren't as quick to kind of jump on the next fad. So I feel like because we've had guys like Zion and Luca to a degree and Wembanyama, I don't feel like people are, I'm hoping not actually. I'm hoping that people don't kind of jump so quickly on someone like Cooper Flag and go with that kind of hype train sort of thing down the line and just overspend your budget. Or if you're looking at a football analogy, like getting a Mac Jones.
right. Oh yeah,
What's happened with that guy? Like there's some really cautionary tales of
yeah.
issues with people overspending. I don't feel like that's happening as much, but I feel like there are in some ways the market is really strong, and it sometimes it's hard to win cards that you really want in auctions online. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that on eBay quite a bit in a couple of areas in talking to friends and myself. So the nice thing about this Jack Johnson is this actually I won not on eBay, but through Collector Investor Auctions. It's a new auction house. If anybody watches Chris Sewell, he
Yeah,
has
he's
a
great.
very good YouTube channel. And he
He's
and his
great.
buddy Jeremy run that auction house. Yeah, top notch integrity, communication. I mean, I had a great experience bidding with them, but their auction house obviously a bit less known than eBay, so I think I got maybe lucky there that I was able to get a better deal. But I've noticed a couple areas where I collect where prices are just seem to be trending upward without any sign of going backward, and that's we talked about 90s football. Man, I'm glad I got some of the 90s football stuff I did when I did, because that stuff does seem to be kind of steadily increasing. And also too, I'll tell you, pre-war football, um, that stuff, the 35 National Chickle set, the 33 Sport Kings, Jim Thorpe and Red Grange, but especially 35 Chickles. I feel like there's been a lot of, and my buddy, Jeremy from Lefty Groveland Cards talks about this a lot on his channel, a lot of pumping pre-war stuff in general, with initially a focus on baseball, but now it's trickled into football. So it seems like a lot of that stuff. I got most of what I wanted from there a while back, but it seems like that stuff too is just very difficult for friends of mine who are trying to bid on it to win. So I think you're right, Will. We do see a
Wow.
very strong market right now, and those are just the areas I'm familiar with. I'm sure you guys collect a little differently than I do in some ways, so you're probably seeing it in other areas too.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man, because it feels like I think anything below a PSA 10 and you can pick up for pennies, man. So an interesting play that I'm hoping to make, mainly because I think they find it difficult to source them here, is I'm trying to buy as many graded cards as I can. And I remember around the boom time trying to even buy a Kevin Durant rookie
Mm,
card. So there was that Topps Kevin Durant rookie card. I don't know if
yeah,
you
I
remember.
remember
They
it.
had it like a white and an orange and a
Yeah,
black.
black. Yeah,
And even if I was to look for a PSA 7, they were selling for about $80 or $90. Those are the prices that I could find online. I bought an 8 yesterday for $15. $15 for a PSA 8. And it's just like that's a ridiculously good deal. Like if you don't
I
care about a 10, why not, dude?
and that's a phenomenon of modern cards, and that's been I know I don't know if you saw this a bit ago, but Jeff Wilson sparked some controversy with that on his channel, talking about how basically you should only be buying these really high graded cards of iconic players,
Yeah.
and buy the grade, not the card is his motto. And it's sort of, what, like, this seems to be a distinct phenomenon in modern collecting where this hunt for PSA
Yeah.
10 is absurd. And I've got to tell you, I think there's going to be a correction on that at some point, right? Where nines and eights, especially, I think nines are such a sweet spot, right? Because at some point, people are going to
Definitely.
get sick of this, chase for tens or submitting their cards to PSA and then coming back, raw cards coming back eights and such. Where I think more people are going to go after those nines. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not as much in that world, but it seems to me like I would be maybe hoarding some of those nines and waiting for the time to come when the market corrects a bit on those, because it's absurd to me the drop off between tens and nines and eights in that side of the hobby.
It's ridiculous because how much does it cost for you to grade a card to begin with? So you're
Yeah,
paying less than what it costs you to grade the card. I'm like, I'll take
ridiculous
it, dude. I'll take
for
it
sure.
all day.
Yeah,
A Kevin Durant PSA 8 for $15? Are you kidding? Like, it's
and if you can
ridiculous.
tell
I
me
love
the
it.
difference between an eight and a 10 most of the time, good for you, because I can't. I look at
Yeah.
eights, I look at
Yeah.
tens, I'm like, especially in the modern stuff, it's like I can't. I mean, maybe there's some minor thing, but it's like most of the time
Surface stuff
I have
often,
no idea. Yeah,
surface often. I
yeah,
just bought the same thing again. I'm doing it for semi to resell, so and and get a little bit of profit margin on that. But at the same time, I'm like, if I'm left holding this card, it's fine. So I'm looking for guys that I like. A guy that you're gonna like that I like, who I think is gonna have a great year this year, is Cade Cunningham. So
yes,
I bought a BGS 9 of his for, I want to say $17.50. It's
that's
a
awesome.
Prism BGS 9. The subgrades, I think there's one 8.5. So all of the rest of the subgrades are like 9 or 9.5.
Wow,
So it's just one subgrade off from being a 9.5. And for like $17? Come
that's
on, man.
amazing.
Like, it's
His
ridiculous. It's
his stuff
cheaper than
is
the
still
price of
down
grading.
there.
Unreal.
Yeah, no, I had to use some discipline at the national. So just because I stay kind of within a lane doesn't mean that I don't have like the little devil on my shoulder always telling me to go outside my lane and buy different stuff. the
Oh,
the
yeah.
devil on my shoulder told me to buy about five Cade Cunningham autos this year at the National. I mean, his stuff, it's still, you can pick one, a good one up for under a couple $100. It's like, man,
It's
I really
ridiculous.
thought about it, but just
Ooh.
it's just so, like I always tell people, and I've told you this, my goal in the hobby is to build a collection I'm happy with and not get divorced. If I go down too many rabbit holes, that second thing becomes mighty difficult. So especially in a year when we're having a second child and everything. So I had to hem myself in a bit, but boy, Cade is tempting, not just because he's, my guy on my favorite NBA team, but also, like you said, like I think his stuff is gonna, I think he's on a very much an upward trajectory.
Especially with a lot of what's going to happen this year. Like, who else is going to be competing in the Eastern Conference?
Yep,
It's the
exactly. It's a weak
Pistons.
conference.
It's the Pistons. They have lost with Beasley. I think they've lost a trick. I thought he was their third best player in that team. But
Yeah.
I mean, they're not signing him back anytime soon. But I think they made some pretty good offseason acquisitions. You got Jaden Ivey, who's going to be coming back, hopefully fully fit and hopefully better at basketball, because he
I
seems a little
still
bit
have
clueless, a bit
optimism for him. He's
reckless.
got
He
potential.
seems, yeah, definitely. Like, he's super athletic. He's got basically basic basketball skills. I just don't think he knows how to play basketball
Correct.
very well. And
Yes.
he's a bit reckless. It's just like, dude, what are you doing? And he's just out of control a bit. So if the game can slow down for him because he's so quick, it will be fun to see him
Yeah.
improve this year, hopefully, and maybe a year on the sidelines or however long it was will definitely help him evolve in that way. And maybe he comes off the bench and is just this spark plug who just gets a boatload of points, a microwave esque type player. That'd be fun
Oh,
too.
there you go. That I like that. Vinny Johnson was one of my favorites as a kid because he
Oh
hit
yeah,
that game winner
oh yeah.
against Portland in '90 for in Game 5. So yeah, that's a great reference on that. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I thought you'd like that with the Detroit
I did.
reference of a Detroit legend. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Hey, let's go straight into day two, man. So tell us a little bit more about what you picked up. A few more stories, hopefully. Let's see what else happened to you at the
yeah.
National, buddy.
So day 2 was awesome. And this is again, like I think going to the National for one day is tough because you're not going to get through what's there, and I imagine it would be very stressful too, right? Trying to do all your business in that one day. So day 2, I went in. I felt like I had a good lay of the land, kind of knew what was where, and I've got to be honest. Thursday this year was more crowded than Friday. I don't know what was in the water, but Thursday at the National, it was. It was the most crowded day I have ever been to in 2 years of going to the National. I don't know what was going on, but Thursday was ridiculous. So I got there early Friday. Show started at, they started letting people in like 9:45. I was in line by 9:15. Still, the line was like, the show was in Rosemont. I felt like I was standing in line in downtown Chicago. The line was literally like way, way, way around the block. So the hobby is alive and well from that perspective. But I got in, and the show, I mean, because the Stevenson Center is huge. So the show was still pretty open at that time. So I was finally able to track down a guy that I knew I was looking for. I know his wife's name is Lisa. I still cannot recall his name. I know I've gotten it, but it's this old couple, older, I would say. He's probably late 60s, something like that. And they deal in the coolest pre-war stuff. They had 1894 Mayo Cup Plug football cards. They had a button from Peter Jackson, Sam Langford fight in the early 20th century. It's like they have all of this really interesting stuff. A lot of to my interest in him, boxing cards. And last year when we did our national debrief, I showed you this guy. I've got it. I don't think I have it with me, that one. Oh, yeah, I do. I showed you this guy, 1890 Mayo Cup Plug Peter Jackson card, which was a great pickup from the national last year. And that 1890 Mayo Cup Plug card set is tough. It is very, very tough. And I remembered last year that this guy had a whole stack of them. And this year I came in to the National. If you'd have asked me, hey, what are the top 2 cards walking into the building that you want to purchase? I would have told you 2 from that 1890 Mayo Cup Plug set. The Barbados Joe Walcott rookie and the George Dixon rookie, both from that set. Now, those are both late 19th, early 20th century boxers. George Dixon was the first black man to ever win any sort of world championship in any sport when he won the bantamweight title in 1890. Barbados Joe Walcott was the first black welterweight champion when he won the title in 1901, and he was one of the best to ever do it. If you've heard of Jersey Joe Walcott, he took his fighting name from Barbados Joe Walcott because, in his opinion, Barbados Joe Walcott was the best fighter to ever put the gloves on. But these are both sub 10 between SGC and PSA total, so I didn't know if I'd find them or not. So if I was going to find him, my guy was my best chance. And this guy's hilarious because you know how most people would have kind of the top cards from a set on their stacks, right? If you have stacks of 33 Goudies, you're going to have the Ruth on top. You're going to have your big stuff on top. I learned from last year, this guy just has stacks, right? It's not the most, it is not the most organized setup. So I asked for his stack of cup plugs. He had 2 of them there. And this is important for later, but he gives me the first stack, and I said, hey, you probably don't remember from last year, but I bought the Peter Jackson off you. He didn't remember me, but he remembered everything about that Peter Jackson card. He's like, oh, yeah, it was well-centered, but it had a mark. I'm like, oh, that's a great card. I'm like, this guy's incredible. So he's a very nice – I mean, these are just nice people. I mean, really, just a pleasure to deal with. And – I go through his first stack, and I'm about 3/4 of the way down. And mind you, right, and for those that don't do vintage boxing, the Joe Walcott card would be one that most people who collect this era of boxing would say that's one of the biggest cards in the set. He's got it way down the stack somewhere, right? But I come to it, and boy, is it a beauty. This 1890 Mayo Cup Plug, Barbados Joe Walcott rookie. I found it, and I broke my own cardinal rule. When you find a card you want, don't get too excited. Don't give the dealer any leverage. I think I just went something like, holy cow, this is it. This is what I'm looking for. So, I mean, there was no ambiguity on it. I think I even told him, like, I'm going to buy this no matter what you say the price is, but please go easy on me. And he did. He knocked $100 off of it for me, which I thought was very fair considering he could have sold it to me at sticker price, and I honestly would have bought it. But very nice man. So yeah, he sold me that one, and it's just so well centered. It has a little bit of light creasing in it. Don't care. But man, I got this thing, and I was literally, this is what I love about the hobby, right? Is I got this, and I felt like I was a little kid pulling Barry Sanders card again. I looked at it, just walked around looking at it like this for the next
Amazing.
hour or so. But I got so excited that I picked up that card that, and this will come into play later, I actually didn't think to look at his second stack of cup plugs at the time. I didn't think about it. I was
Of
so
course not.
excited to get the card I got that I just sort of wandered off. And I actually, it was pretty cool because last year I went to the show with my brother and another friend of mine who, my friend, him and his dad own a card shop in my hometown of Mount Pleasant, Michigan. This year, my buddy's dad was going to the show, and I actually linked up with him, and it was so much fun to walk around with him the rest of the day. He's an older guy, and running a shop, it's just so interesting to do the national with somebody who runs a shop because they're looking for inventory. And the way that they buy is a little bit different. They're always looking for where's the room on this. And there's so much stuff that he passed on where I'm like, how did you pass on that? I'm like, because of course I just want to buy everything. I mean, he's a Michigan guy, so he's looking at a ton of Lions stuff and everything like that. So he picked up some cool Lions stuff. His phone died, so I was helping him price out stuff and figure out what we should offer and everything like that, looking up comps. Bought a couple really cool Mickey Mantle cards, actually. I don't do vintage baseball, so that's the closest I'm ever going to get to making deals for Mickey Mantles. So that was a lot of fun. And just listening to someone who'd been around the hobby forever, I mean, talking about, pulling a Walter Payton rookie back in 76. And, it's just for me, I know I sound, obviously I'm on the old, maybe mentally older end of the hobby, but to me, that's really cool is to just, listen to people's stories about collecting throughout the years. And and along those lines, I was able to bump into a few of my football collector buddies that I'd known through IG. I had never actually met in person. I was sitting there looking at a vintage football card table, and I heard two of them introduce themselves to each other, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're TX card man and you're Scotty Tradition. I'm like, vintage football, vintage FB 52. So we all follow each other, we all talk to each other. But so I got to talk to them a bit. And what was cool about that is my buddy TX Cardman on Instagram had gone into the show saying his big goal was to pick up a 1935 National Chico Bronco Nagurski, which is the grail of grails for football cards.
Yep.
I mean, a one is going to be at this point 15 grand or more, a PSA or SGC one. Huge card. But he had been planning this out. He brought a ton of trade bait, a bunch of stuff to sell so he could work up to it. He had purchased the most beautiful PSA 1 of that card that I have ever seen. So I asked him if he got it. He took it out and I saw it. And I'm like, can you just let me hold that for a minute, please? So he did. He was kind enough to let me hold this card, and a card I may never have in my collection. But it was so cool to see somebody get that and just, it's fun to watch your friends pick up big cards. It's nice. It's, just cool to see how excited he was. But that was a nice conversation to get to chat about vintage football and, some of those type of things. So, I mean, at this point, though, I think my budget's, I'm not planning on buying anything else. Technically, I've already spent my budget, but you know how it is, right? You've spent your budget, but if you see the right thing, there's always, something. Maybe you can work a little something here and there. So I'm walking through the show with my buddy Marty, and literally my whole thing is I keep telling him, I'll just go wherever you go because I'm done. I'm not buying anything else. I'm done. So we're walking around, I think at this point we've said we're going to leave the show in like another, half hour, 45 minutes or something. And we've circled back to, we've kind of walked around to the point where we come back to my buddy's table with the Mayo cup plugs, my dealer friend over there. So I want to show Marty, I'm like, hey, you have to see what this guy has. Now, I have no intention of buying anything, right? None whatsoever. I've already feel like I've only bought 2 cards there, but I feel like I've had a good show, got stuff I like. So I'm just showing Marty everything he has, and I showed him the stacks of cup plugs. I'm like, this is the set that the Walcott rookie came from. So this is the same set. So I'm, just showing him. And at this point, the dealer says to me, he's like, hey, did you even look through this second stack of cup plugs that I have? I'm like, a smart salesman, right? He knows he's got his audience there. Well, before that, he told me that actually probably an hour after I bought the Walcott, he had a guy pass through asking if he had this card. So if I'd have been an hour later, if I'd have been an hour later, somebody might have got this one. And this isn't one. I mean, there was not another one on the show floor. I can promise you that. So if I was an hour later, I would not be, showing this one off right now. But he takes out his second stack of cup plugs, and per usual, he's got some faintly known guy on top. Like it wouldn't attract somebody to look at the stack. He's going through them, and all of a sudden, what do I see? But he gets this. He comes to this 1890 Mayo Cup plug George Dixon rookie. And like I said before, the first black man to ever win a championship in any sport in 1890. And this is one I bid on this, and I was the underbidder on this. Months and months ago. A 1.5 that went for, I want to say it was $565 or something like that. So not a cheap card. This one's in an SGC3. It's an old slab, and obviously, off-centered, but still a great looking card. So I come to this card, and he's got 525 slapped on it. And I see it, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, I've already blown my budget, and you're making this tough on me. I'm like, what's your best on it? And I'm expecting him to say maybe 500, something like that, 475. He tells me 400. Wow. So that's 400, and he laughs. He's like, you didn't expect me to say that, did you? And honestly, I think at this point he was doing me a little bit of a solid because we've done business for a couple of years. We've had great interactions. He's a really nice guy. So yeah, I think listen, in a one, this is a 3, and a 1.5. Just a few months ago, it went for $562 on eBay. So $400. I looked at him. I'm like, I'll figure it out when I get home. I'll sell what I have to sell to get there, but I'm not leaving here without it. So we did the deal. So I ended up going home with both of the Cup Plugs cards I wanted. I just like holding these up next to each other. Took them both. These are just beautiful cards to me. I like the background, kind of like the nature scene. Just really, I don't know. The fact that they were made in 1890 and they still exist in this condition is just incredible. So my buddy Marty, of course, the whole time is egging me on to make this purchase. He's like, you can't say no to that. Come on. I'm like, that's what you need, right? Every good card friend is
definitely.
No, you've blown your budget. Don't make your wife mad. You're going to be like, hey, you got to make this purchase. And he was right. Like he pushed me a little bit toward it, and I'm glad he did because when am I going to find another one? Right? Like that's my rationale. It's like I can pass on stuff that, I saw a lot of other cool stuff, but I'm going to see it again. These, I've never, in the time I've been looking for this card, which is well over a year now, I have never seen one come up for sale, the Walcott. I've seen one Dixon come up for auction. There's 2 more on eBay, but they are priced absurdly. They're priced at like $1,900 for a 1 and then a 2 at like $3,800. It's like you're not trying to sell the card at that point. You're trying to have an eBay online museum because that's, not a real thing. But yeah, so that's what I did. I pulled the trigger on it, and that was kind of the end of my national. I thanked, my buddy and his wife and everything like that. That was my last big purchase. I did come across another boxing dealer there who has a great selection of stuff and talked to him a bit. I didn't buy anything from him. I probably would have considered it if I hadn't already got the Jack Johnson off auction. That was he had one of those, a very nice one. He's the guy who had the 2 in that card. But just a very nice guy. And I say that to make the point that one of my big observations, from the National these past 2 years is like, it's been really nice dealing with kind of the vintage boxing dealers. Their tables aren't always crowded, so you can really sit there and talk about cards, and they really seem to love what they're doing, and genuinely nice people that want to bring you further into that world. So yeah, day 2 was awesome. All that to say, day 2 was great. Day 3, I'm sure would have been fun too, but frankly, probably good I didn't go because I, didn't have any money left anyway. So, beyond no money left at that point. But I'm very happy with what I got at the show as well as overall what my national budget got me this year. So yeah, definitely. I know there's going to be negative stuff out there this year too that I've already been hearing a bit, and some of it, obviously is a bit true from certain perspectives, right? You could think the show was a bit too gimmicky. It was obviously very crowded, so on and so forth. But I thought it was a great time, and I'm excited to go back again, hopefully next year.
I'm guessing, let me ask about Fanatics Fest later on. I have a Fanatics Fest question for you, but first of all, I quite like the blow your budget story, mainly because there are some, I put them up there as grail cards of mine that I've purchased in the past, that when I was buying them, I was so nervous about the budget. I was like, this is going to be going over my card budget for a while. Do I really want to do this? And, when I'm on, and these are both online buys, so I'm with my phone, just kind of holding it up, pacing back and forth, and putting in my top bid and hoping that it doesn't get outbid. And when it does, I'm like, am I going to be able to find this card again?
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
when you were telling me that story, that those questions just came into my mind straight away, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair to myself, I've never seen the two cards that I've purchased that I spent well over my budget for, and I got them. And I've never seen them again come up online for sale. And in fact, the only time I have is when there was a guy who owned two copies of the card that I have. He contacted me via private message and he said, look, I just wanted to let you know, because I know that you're following the prices and you have one of your own now. He's like, I just sold one of the two cards that I have, and he told me the price, and it was $1,000 more than I had paid for it. So I was like,
Nice.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I didn't even need that validation beforehand, but I was just like, sometimes you just know that you got to have the card. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's going to be a limit, but you're willing to kind of go, all right, I'm going to have to sell a few cards to get back this card later on, and that's what I'm going to do. And I have done that for those two cards, and I assume that's what you're doing right now. Going, I bought this $400 card. Now I'm going to have to be looking through my PC. Maybe it's some Barry cards that I can move on now because I'm going to be making money off them with sales.
Yeah.
But I think all in all, from the sounds of things and the way that your tone is, I can hear the same tone with myself in the past going, damn, I made a good choice with that one. Even though
Yeah.
you're kind of almost cringing at how expensive it is. At the end of the day, you know that was a great purchase and you're not going to have that chance again. And I'm glad that you had that voice in your ear, your friend going,
Yeah.
this ain't going to come around anytime soon, because you need that. And often John's been my voice going, man, you got to go for that card, mate. You're not going to get that one anytime soon. And so often those sorts of cards, when they've come up for auction online, I've talked to John about it, and he's like, does that card come up very often? I'm like, look, I've never seen this one before, dude. He's like, well, you're going to have to get ready to pay for it. And so I do, and I've never regretted those sales so far. And in fact, I know that if I had to, if there was, touch wood, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if I needed a bunch of money, I could go out and sell those cards today, and I'd be earning a profit from them. And that's not what it's about, but I like that I made those moves.
Yeah, I already got an offer on those two cut plugs for both of them for 200 over what I paid. So it's now am I going to sell them? No, but yeah, those are rare enough, and there's enough people in the vintage boxing community that want them to where, yeah, if I ever have to move those, I mean, I would be able to move them pretty easily. But I have no desire to at the moment. I'm and like you said, well, I always, when I think of my hobby regrets, it's been the times I haven't pulled the trigger on those rare cards, and then they kind of disappear into obscurity and I don't see them again. Every rare one like that I pulled the trigger on, I'm just, I don't even think about the cost. An hour later, it's out of my head, and I'm just so happy I'm holding on to it, and that it's in my PC.
It's funny that cost just kind of disappears. You know what it is, but you're like, oh. And it just doesn't matter after. You're just so happy with the purchase. And I remember when I won those cards online, and I ended up getting the cards in hand. I was just like, man, it's worth it. It's exactly what I wanted. And so you, at that moment, I'm sure, like you said, after you purchased the first one, you're just walking around the showroom looking at it going, yeah, I'm a winner.
I was too. And it's so funny though, because like, obviously, right, like this is a bit of a niche collecting spot. So, you walk around and you try to show people what you have. People are like, what is this? Like, it's just, it's so funny. But I always, I found a couple boxing dealers to show them to that were really like, yeah, that's super cool. So, not that I needed that. I was just telling myself how cool it was walking around with it anyway. But yeah, no, I really, like, the second I got that second card, the second I got that Dixon in my hand, it was like, yeah, no, I made the right move. Because, yeah, I mean, I when is the next one going to come up that's going to be in my price range? And I have no idea, legitimately no idea when that's going to be.
Especially when you're saying their pop report numbers are, sub 10 cards.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a very good chance you're never going to see that again. So
yeah, like I said with the wall pop, I have not seen one. I have never seen one pop up for sales. So
wow, that's it. That's exactly it. Out of those what are they called, cut plug cards?
Yeah.
So out of those two and the Jack Johnson, and obviously it's pretty hard to see because you're just showing me through a camera, but I really like the Jack Johnson, buddy. I love the background. And then you've shown it a couple of times, but I want to see it again. I love the sunburst behind. Oh no, the second one, the other one. I like the color one. That one's a
You want
beauty,
the
by
color
the way.
one? Oh yeah,
So
that
that
one.
black and
Yeah,
white, I love
this is
that he's wearing
yeah.
long pants. But the color one, I love the sunburst in the background, and it's contrasting with this dark black skin. And the artist on that
This
is
is my
incredible.
favorite Jack Johnson card I own. I mean, it's between this and the caramel card that I got
Yeah,
earlier in the year, and I know I've shown on the channel before, but yeah, no, I think this is it. I just absolutely look at the pose, like it's just he's so lifelike in this picture, contrasted against
yeah,
those
it's so
bright
good.
colors in the
Yeah,
background, the gloves. You know, it's just I don't know, like this picture to me it really captures Jack Johnson and really screams like early 20th century boxing. And yeah,
amazing.
I'm with you, Will. This is my favorite Jack Johnson card that I own, I believe. So definitely good choice.
Awesome, man. That's really cool. Anything else that you'd like to share with us about the national, buddy, before we go?
I mean, I think that covers most of the points that I would make, other than to say that I do think that if you haven't attended one before, it's definitely something worth putting on the bucket list, right?
It's online.
You know, it's got to be because it is just such a spectacle. Go in understanding that there's going to be some parts of it that are your thing and some parts of it that aren't, and it might take a day for you to parse out where the things that you want to go to are. Use that first day as just kind of like I would say, you know, experimentation. Figure out where the stuff you want is, and then the next day or two. I think 3 days is the perfect number of days there, to be honest.
Yeah.
But definitely do more than one, just so you have some time to get your bearings before you make any purchases. And I would say, you know, if it's me, you know, go in with your top things you're looking for, top things you really want to pick up, being the most rare stuff you're thinking about, because that's where you're going to get, and potentially, I think that's where you get the best deals too, because some of this stuff, you know, isn't stuff that dealers can move quite as easily because there's a more of a narrow audience for it. So I would say also, you know, kind of going with that mindset where if you can get some of the more rare stuff on there, that's the kind of the best thing for, in my opinion, to target at the national. But other than that, man, no, not really. It was a great show, and I appreciate you, you know, bringing me on to talk about it with everything still so fresh in my mind.
Yeah, it was great fun, man. I really enjoyed you sharing everything about the national. All right, but yeah, I think we'll leave it there, and I'm looking forward to seeing your next interview or the next time we chat online like this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, man, that sounds great. Always appreciate you having me, Will.
All right, perfect, buddy. See you soon.
All right, take care.